It is my pleasure on behalf of the faculty of the Hahnemann College of Homeopathy to welcome you to Volume 1 of our Foundations of Homeopathic Philosophy series. It is our belief that a careful study of this information will provide a firm and secure foundation for your understanding and practical application of homeopathic principles. The presentations, even those of basic material, are filled with wisdom gained through long years of experience and are intended to be of interest to both beginning and intermediate students. The topics covered in this series are as follows. The first is overview of homeopathy, and this presentation touches on the cornerstones of homeopathic practice, summarizing the essential characteristics of an energy medicine, and these are energetic physiology and pathology, the law of similars, Hering's law, or the lawful movement of symptoms during healing, case-taking, case analysis, and repertorization, and finally, some comments on cure. Next comes a discussion on research. And this discussion is really an essential lecture both for those who are inclined in this direction and for those who need to answer to skeptics. It deals with both earlier and contemporary scientific validations of the action of potentized substances. These validations are both in the abstract, that is, pure research, and when the remedies are prescribed according to homeopathic principles. Coming back from this, returning more to the center of homeopathic thought, we come to an introduction to the organon. Although entitled an introduction, this is more like an in-depth commentary, throwing light on the most important aphorisms from Hahnemann's seminal work. Here we begin to elaborate in more detail the fundamental principles upon which the science of homeopathic medicine is based. This exploration of the organon is continued in the next talk, which has its focus around the law of similars. Although the lecture begins in this way, with a further discussion of the aphorisms which are connected to this law, it naturally evolves or extends itself to include the pattern which we call the evolution of a remedy, or how a remedy comes into being from, so to say, birth to maturity. The remedy used here to illustrate the point is platina, and I'm sure you will find a discussion around this quite fascinating. Now that you are getting a feel for the real depth and subtlety of homeopathic thought, we can take one more step and introduce you to the concepts which are dealt with in the talk entitled Essence and Central Delusion. This enters even more deeply into the aphorisms concerned with the scope and relationship of the symptoms on which a remedy is chosen. It highlights the development of thought from Hahnemann's totality through Vitulcus's essence to Sankaran's central delusion, illustrating the natural progression of thinking from one master to another and the essential unity of these concepts. Having arrived at, in a way, the essence of the essence, there is nowhere to go but back to the surface, and so we pass to an introduction to books. Although I have called this the surface, I do not mean the information is just superficial stuff. This lecture does cover the recommended text of the Hahnemann College course, but rather than just listing this book or that, it goes into a comprehensive discussion of such texts as Allen's Encyclopedia, Hering's Guiding Symptoms, Clark's Dictionary, and others. It details their structure and their historical and practical function in the substantial body of homeopathic literature. In addition to this, the talk ends with an invaluable commentary on the evolution of thought with respect to the periodic table in the works of Sankaran and Shalton. Here, in order that you not become completely overwhelmed in the vastness of homeopathic detail, we have opted to present the way in which this multitude of details has been arranged to make it accessible to you in everyday practice. This, of course, means the repertory. The lecture begins with an overview of the concept of a repertory and a brief discussion of various repertories. However, the main focus is really Kent's repertory. Thus, the presentation covers an in-depth explanation of the structure and layout of this book, with a particular focus on the mental and general sections. You will be treated to a clear exposition filled with useful tips on how to use the repertory, including benefits and pitfalls of different repertorization techniques, where to find certain symptoms, and more. Although this is really a must for the beginning prescriber, even the intermediate practitioner will find many unexpected pearls and helpful hints to enhance their repertorization skills. The series ends with a presentation on acute case-taking. This hour-long talk, although centered on techniques for gathering symptoms during acute illness, extends its scope well beyond these limits to include valuable information on evaluating the vital force, differentiating acute from chronic symptoms, recognizing which cases not to take and which to take, defining useful and non-useful symptoms, and of course, discussion on potency and repetition. So in the end, we hope that you will indeed derive full benefit from the fruits of our experience and will find as much enjoyment in the receiving as we have experienced in the giving. What we aim for, a certain standard by which it's in a sense necessary to measure oneself against. Have a standard, and to measure oneself is not an excuse for beating oneself up. At the same time, unless there's something against which one can sort of reflect oneself and against which one can measure oneself, there's no hope. Idea of healing is in a way what we're trying to accomplish here. And the dictionary definition of healing, Old English, it comes from Old English how, which is whole. Yes? To make sound or whole. To make whole. This is what touches one about homeopathy, in a way, is that it's not a system which sort of deals with one part in this way and another part in that way. We are interested in unity, in wholeness, in one. And when we address and face our case, our patients, we are trying to understand what will bring them together as one functioning unit. So how would we conceive of an organism which is one unit? And we have to have a model in which we can apply our thought to an organism which is not just a mind, just a body, just this, but is one functioning unit. And this idea is actually becoming very popular. Yes? I mean, the whole idea of ecology, of ecosystems, of all these things.